When I was at high school, I was from the Outer Gulf Islands, and we went on a water taxi over to the high school. So we had a little crew that went with us. But when I got to the high school, I was meeting other kids from Salt Spring. And pretty quickly, I met a guitarist and a drummer, and they found that I had played bass. And they said, well, let's jam. I hadn't really done that. And so we went into the band room and we started jamming. And it was unbelievable because it was kind of funky. I was kind of into the Chili Peppers at the time. But this thing that happened was the door opened to the band room and these like 3 grade 12 girls came in and started dancing and kind of like, I think that might have been from Fulford, right? So if you know Salt Spring, this kind of maybe more hippier, more hippie vibes, but they started dancing in this band room and like spinning around. And I was like, holy shit. Yeah, this is cool. This is very cool. I like this a lot, you know? We were just grooving, you know, and there was no discussion about, you know, where we were going. We're just in the moment. And that feeling of people on stage together, and then also in the moment with the people that are listening and having this connection, that to me was like, I had never felt that anywhere else. And that was when I knew that it was like, man, I get so much energy from performing, and I loved that. It's like, how do we keep doing this, you know? In terms of bass, and music was in my family, but my brother Rob, one of my older brothers, he brought an electric guitar home from Vancouver one day to Main Island. It was like, whoa. He was the one that he would sort of make these things happen. And he brought this electric guitar to the house, and he went to work. And my brother Tom and I were like, okay, man, well, it's on. Let's plug this thing in and we're gonna rock immediately. So we plugged it in, and it was like, we're not rocking, but I think we just need to rock harder. We need to play harder. And all we did was break a bunch of strings. And it was like, oh no, because you can't get strings on Main Island at all. So my brother came home and he was like, what have you done? But then I think it was that following Christmas that was coming up, my parents got me a bass for Christmas. And secretly, when I opened it up, I was like disappointed because I was hoping it was gonna be a Nintendo. Years later, I got a Nintendo. I was like, oh, thank God I didn't get a Nintendo, man. Thank God I got a bass. But I got a bass, just started playing with my brothers. And, you know, I don't know why my parents chose bass. I realized I'd always listened to bass. Like I was always humming bass lines. I can remember bass lines long before, even to this day, I know bass lines and parts, particularly the low end parts, before I know lyrics. I don't learn lyrics that well, you know, but it's these little parts. But I loved it. Like I just really got into it. There's something about bass and where it exists in music that I just think is so cool, you know, and the relationship you have with drummers as a bass player, I think is amazing. It's very unique and special. And also what you can do to influence the harmony, you know, one note difference, you can change the whole tonality of a song. So yeah, it was I was about 12. I got this bass, and then this guy named Bill Bender, who I knew, he was an older guy, and he said, hey, Matthew, I hear you got a bass. And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, well, the gig is like in a couple weeks, essentially. It was like, we're gonna gig. And I was like, okay. So I literally learned to play on gigs, which was awesome. And I think that was really cool. It wasn't for years. Years later, I went back to school to study music more formally. And that was really hard. It was like very humbling. And it was hard to kind of reconcile these different things of like counting. I'd never counted in music, you know? And then these two different sides of the brain. It took a long time to sort of have them come together. Like, it's okay to overanalyze. I'd never analyzed what we were doing, ever. And I probably made a lot of mistakes along the way because of that. But at the time, you know, and I say mistakes, like there's, you know, so yeah, that's kind of how it started happening. Yeah. Certainly at the beginning, I think it's all the same source in a way, though. I think ultimately it's again, the authenticity, I think, is the thing, and getting out of and just being present. That, I think that's the biggest thing. In high school, we used to, some friends of mine, we used to go to Victoria, and there was a bar that had like a blues night. you had to be obviously 19 to go. And we would go to this open mic and we would act like we were acting like we were 19. I mean, we were probably 16, and I'm sure everybody knew we were underage, but they would let us play. And we could play, which was cool. There was that kind of raw energy that I think people pick up on, and authenticity, you know, and that feeling of, it's like our secret, you know? It's like, man, we was last time going back to high school the next day. It's like, can you believe we were in that bar last night playing? And I was with my closest friends that I grew up with. We had a band. When I moved to Vancouver and started freelancing and started playing with people that I wasn't super close to, that took me a minute. And I felt that maybe I was a little bit, and I held back a little bit more reserved. It didn't take long, but when you open yourself up, it's intimate, right? Like playing music, I think authentically, it's pretty intimate. You have to open yourself up to that. And then I began to be able to do that, and quickly made lots of friends and connections through music. With the different genres, I think for me anyways, it's the same. And it really has to be, my thing is it's like fully committed to the notes, fully committed to kicking ass. Like that is what I want to do all the time. I don't want to do it halfway when I play bass, ever. And that could be not playing. And I love watching a drummer snare, and I love how if I stop playing right as the stick hits the snare and I mute my note, all of a sudden we're moving a different way. If I let my note ring over that snare shot, we move in a different way. But we can propel as a unit simply by not playing. But I'm dedicated to that rest. You know what I mean? And I feel like when I started playing with Jesse Roper and like doing rock and roll, big stage, it's just like, I want to play and I want to just kick the shit out of everybody. You know, like not in a bad way, but just like, yeah, you know, feel it, like feel something. You know, I think that to me is something that I'm terrified of the thought of not feeling something. I'm fortunate to play a lot of different genres of music. I love playing different genres of music and getting inside. When I first started doing that, I feel like it was harder for me to find the commonality in me, in my performance. And I think over the years, I've begun to see that while there are different musical approaches, my personal approach is still the same, and it's like being really present and a lot of intention, you know. And I feel like I can go from playing, you know, maybe a country gig to a rock and roll gig to a reggae gig with the commonality is the intention, authentic intention. Like this is who I am. This is who I'd like us to be in a way, you know, and sometimes that's really being supportive. Other times it's like going to the front of the stage and just being like, it's just drum and bass, and it's like, let's just play, but like your life depends on it. Years ago, I was fortunate to do a reggae record out in Toronto with a producer named John Forbes, and he mixed for Sly and Robbie. And Sly and Robbie are obviously one of the all-time great drum and bass sections. And he told me that when Sly and Robbie play, that they do nothing less than set out to commit absolute murder, like every time. And that resonated with me. It's just like, if you're not, what are we doing if we're not doing that? What I want to do, and I think that again, it's like you can be a chameleon, and I think being a chameleon, there's an art to it. There really, really is. A lot of studio guys, it's like the ability to be that chameleon. What's harder than that is to be that unique chameleon, you know, like that person that can do all this stuff, but they are themselves, the best version of me. I learned that from my friend Richard Brown. He's like, you can't control everything, but you can determine, are you the best version of you? And it takes time, for sure. And it takes great relationships and great music. And I was saying to Catherine the other day, like after we played, we had this rehearsal, we hadn't played together in a year. It's like this rehearsal, I was just like, holy shit, man, how lucky am I? You know, how lucky am I that everyone in this room is meeting me? You know, like we're dedicated to it and passionate about it and authentic. That's all you can really ask for.